Kyle Scott, crossingbroad.com. We're going to look at the line and how to bet this game, and this one's a little odd, man. We just had John Clayton from 710 ESPN on, Kyle, and the people in Seattle are very skeptical of the Seahawks, which makes it interesting because on this side, you would think the Seahawks, are the 85 Bears. I guess the 85 Bears wouldn't be it because they're not very good defensively. I guess it would be like the greatest show on turf. But I feel like everybody here feels like Philly's got no shot except for the odds makers when this thing started. So give us your breakdown on why the line started at 3 and now is around a pick 'em depending on where you are.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the Seahawks' reputation of the last 5 to 6 years precedes them. Especially we're far away. We think of the Seahawks in these big primetime games, a couple of Super Bowls, all that. So, I think that plays into it. But the line moved over 80% of the money and the bets at DraftKings are on the Seahawks, and about 70% of the bets and the money at kind of like the wide net of legal and offshore sportsbooks. So the bets thus far have been heavily on the Seahawks, and it's kind of holding somewhere around that 1.5 line, depending on where you can find it. And then, of course, there's the injury concerns for the Eagles. After seeing their offense last week and, now having potentially more question marks heading into this game, it's really tough to feel confident about the Eagles, even if their defense is playing better. They're at home. The Seahawks aren't great. It's almost a do or die game for the Eagles in this spot. But all of that considered, you look at their offense and it's like, yikes, they're still going to have to score points somehow. And, they're not going to get a ton of, they're not going to do a whole lot of damage on defense with, Russell Wilson as the opposing quarterback.
Does the line suggest to you, however, that it opens up at 3. Everyone says, oh, we're going to bet Seattle. They're the better team. Does that kind of suggest that Vegas thinks that Philly's going to win the game, that they want everybody to put their money Seattle and then Philly, out? Does it have that feel to you?
Well, look, if you are someone, and Jason, one of the guys we work with here, is a massive fade the public, especially when they're on a road dog, that is his bet system to end all bet systems. So he would tell you right now with 80% of the bets on the road dog, represents a great chance to fade the public and go with the bird. So I'd buy that. Another interesting stat here. Now, bear with me. The theory here is Seahawks coming off a bye, right? So let's talk about late in the season, teams coming off a bye that have to travel east. Pacific time zone teams traveling east off a bye are 3-7 against the spread during November or later, and then they are 1-4 against the spread and 0-5 straight up when they're an underdog in that spot. So what that tells you is these late season buys where, you got a team who's not only might take a quarter or two to get their legs under them, they're traveling across the country, time zones all screwed up. So you got that sort of arbitrary time zone thing working in the Eagles' favor as well. So there are reasons to, bet on the Eagles here, but at the same time, I think our fan base is smart enough to see the product on the field and see how much of a massive work in progress they are offensively.
We also saw the Seahawks 8-2 with a plus 21 net points after seasons. Teams in this mode are 0-5 against the spread straight up, and a lot of people feel like, all right, you won 5 here on the road. At some point, that's got to come crashing down. I don't know. It just feels like everybody feels like Seattle's just a better team, but for some reason, I don't know, that line is kind of making you kind of go the other way. What are some other trends that stick out in this game that could push our betting listeners to one way or the other?
Well, look, so here's one I just gave you one against the Seahawks, gave you the fade the public, but here's one working in Seahawks' favor. They're 12-4-2 against the spread when they're an underdog of 3 or less when Russell Wilson is their starting quarterback, and 5-1 against the spread in that spot late in the season in November, December. So they've, Russell Wilson has been in this line before, short underdog on the road, and he's actually done quite well in that spot. So, I'm sure there's been other teams along the way who've looked at this and said, hey, we got a short line here. Maybe the line is telling us something. Well, the Seahawks have wound up covering when Russell Wilson's been their QB in that spot. So again, you could always find opposing trends, but sometimes I feel like my view on this one is, first of all, it's a really tough game to bet. You have the injury concerns. You don't know what sort of Eagles team you're going to get. You do have a Seahawks team that might take a quarter to get up to speed. And I think other times you just have to look at the product and think, if the Eagles win this, it's a true gutted out performance because, they're working with an inept offense that is significantly dinged up.
Yeah, you just said it, Kyle, where if the Eagles win this, it's going to have to be somewhat ugly. So when you look at the total here, it's very similar thinking to the spread and picking a winner, because if the Eagles win, it's probably going to be low scoring, but can the Eagles keep up with Seattle and lose in a shootout? Obviously, what we've seen here over the past 6 weeks or so doesn't make you feel good that they can do that. So when you look at the total, what are some trends that stand out to you to help make a decision?
Yeah, so and I think we probably talk about this every week. Doug Peterson has very weird over-under home road splits. So at home, the under is the play under Peterson. It hits almost 2 out of every 3 times. On the road, it's usually the over, so it's kind of the opposite of what you might expect. But I agree with everything you just said. If the Eagles are going to win, they're not going to – I don't think they're going to score a ton of points either way. And I think their defense has been playing well enough that you're going to have to – the Seahawks, in my mind, would have to do over 30 points of damage here to hit the over. And I'm just not so sure that's in the cards. So I really like the under here. Now, despite the Peterson trend, despite that kind of observation, there is a kind of telling trend here. And the theory is, okay, you have a home team who's looked bad offensively, right? Under has hit 2 weeks in a row coming into this game. Well, check this out. In these situations where a home team has been really bad offensively, the under is only 32, 91, and 1 late in the season when the total closes between 47 and 49 points. So what that's telling you is, you might look at the last couple weeks and say, no way we approach 50 points, but that is a significant gap. 32 and 91, the under is. So, maybe we do value recency a little bit too much here.
Yeah, and it's funny because Seattle points per game, 27.5 they average. They give up 25.5 per game. Philly scores 23 per game. They give up 23 per game. So
this is impossible.
This is an interesting game.
This out.
And it goes back to that line started at 3, and it's now around a pick'em. And, what is Vegas's message with that there? It should be interesting to see how it all goes. And obviously, if you're advising on this one, if you have a feel for this one, Kyle, what stands out the most on which way you would go here?
So, first of all, normally I wouldn't bet this game. It feels too weird. You got the injury concerns. You got a team that's maddeningly inconsistent. Another team coming off a bye. But I'm local, and of course I'm going to bet it. So Bob is texting me as I'm talking to you, telling me, look, I'm 8-2 on the Eagles this year. Bob is, and he likes the Eagles in the over. So I will couch that with he's been very good in Eagles picks this year. I would take the Seahawks. I would do a game combo at plus 240, the Seahawks plus 1.5 if you could still find it, and the under at plus 240. I think FanDuel Sportsbook had that at least as of a half hour ago. So if I can get that extra half point on the Seahawks to cover maybe an Eagles 1-point win, that's the bet I would take. But honestly, I don't have a strong feel on this because there's just way too many variables right now, and the injury, the injury list with the Eagles is their entire front of their depth chart. It's very scary to bet on that.
So your only feeling is whatever Bob is saying, you're going the exact opposite. He's saying Eagles over, you're taking Seattle under.
Bob was legitimately 6-0 across the board last week, so
he's due for a loss then, Kyle.
He's had 2 unbelievable weeks. So I should not fade him. So we'll put some sort of whiskey wager on this one.
Nice.
Because we're going the opposite way.
Kyle Scott, Crossing Broad. Kyle Scott, like all guests, appear via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Real quick, you got a way to go for the Sixers tonight? Any trends that stick out there?
You know what? I'll tell you, I'm not super up on that game, but Russ did an excellent preview over on the website, so you can check it out. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but he's been actually pretty good with his Sixers calls. So get head on over to the website, take a look at it.
All right, that's at crossingbroad.com. Thanks, man.
Thanks, man. See you.